Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today in this video we will be reading Exodus 8. I have just read Exodus 7 and that is in another video. I had to break it up because it was a little long of a video to go ahead and read 8 and 9 in the last one, so I just made that a separate video. Anyway guys, in this video I'll be reading 8. In this video they start releasing all the plagues. Because Pharaoh refuses to release the Israelites from slavery, they have started to be hit with all kinds of plagues. Those will be in 8 and 9. So I would like to read 8 and 9 together. So this might be a long video. Anyway, before we start, I have a verse that I would like to say. Like I did in the last one. The verse for this video is Philippians 4:13. This is actually my favorite verse, and I actually have it memorized, like top of my head, because I love this verse. But it says, "I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me." I love this verse. Always have. I don't know why I like it. I guess God provides us strength. I love that verse because we can do anything through Christ because He gives us strength to do it. That's who we get our strength from. But I love that verse. Okay, now we're going to get to reading because it's going to be a long video. Anyway, so I'm going to start with 8. I'm going to read verse 1 through 15. The plague of frogs gets released. So, let's see, how can I set this up? I might just have to go like this. Anyway, the Lord spoke unto Moses, "Go unto Pharaoh and say unto him, Thus saith the Lord, Let my people go, and they may serve me. And if thou refuse to let them go, behold, I will smite all the borders with frogs." So he's threatening to let frogs go on them. It's more than a threat. He's actually gonna do it because Pharaoh refuses to listen to him. "And the river shall bring forth frogs abundantly, which shall go up and come into thine house and into thy bedchamber, and upon thy bed, and into the house of thy servants, and upon thy people, and into thy ovens, and into thy kneading troughs. And the frogs shall come up, both on thee and upon thy people, and upon all thy servants. And the Lord spoke unto Moses, saying unto Aaron, Stretch forth thy hand with thy rod over thy streams, over the rivers, and over the ponds, and cause frogs to come up upon the land of Egypt. And Aaron stretched out his hand over the waters of Egypt, and the frogs came up and covered the land of Egypt. And the magicians did so with their enchantments, and brought up frogs upon the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh called for Moses and Aaron, and said, Entreat the Lord that he may take away the frogs from me and from my people, and I will let the people go, that they may do sacrifice unto the Lord. And Moses said unto Pharaoh, Glory over me? When shall I entreat for thee, that for thy servants and for thy people to destroy the frogs from thee and thy houses, that they may remain in the river only? And he said, Tomorrow. And he said, Be it according to thy word, that thou mayst know that there is none like unto the Lord our God, that there is none unto like the Lord our God. And the frogs shall depart from thee, and from thy house, and from thy servants, and from thy people, that they shall remain in the rivers only. And Moses and Aaron went out from Pharaoh, and Moses cried unto the Lord. And Moses and Aaron went out from Pharaoh. And Moses cried unto the Lord because of the frogs which he had brought against Pharaoh. And the Lord did according to his word of Moses. And the frogs died out of the houses, out of the villages and out of the fields. And they gathered together upon the heaps, and the land stank. But when Pharaoh saw that there were respite, he hardened his heart, and heard not unto them, as the Lord had said. So he released frogs on them. They got a lot of frogs. And Pharaoh didn't, when he was told that there was going to be frogs released, he still didn't want to let them go. After the frogs were released, they covered everything. They were everywhere. They were all over the entire, just everywhere. They covered all the land. They were inside houses. They were everywhere. The frogs were unescapable. This in my study Bible. Verse 8, which said, Then Pharaoh called for Moses and Aaron and said, Entreat the Lord, that he may take away the frogs from me and from my people, and I will let the people go, and they may do sacrifices unto the Lord. The explanation with that one is Pharaoh requested for relief from the frogs. Put Moses in a situation similar to that of Abraham in Genesis 20, verses 7 and verse 18. Go read that, and you'll understand where that's coming from. Both the situation, hold on, both were called prophets. Both prayed for a foreign ruler, and the Lord answered both. Exodus 7:1 and Exodus chapter 8 verses 13 and 14. Go read those. And the wording of Pharaoh's request shows that he understood what had happened and what he ought to do. Verses 9 and 10. I'm going to read 9 and 10 in their little information at the bottom. And Moses said unto Pharaoh, Glory over me, when shall I entreat for thee, and for thy servants, and for thy people, to destroy the frogs for thee and thy houses, that they may remain in the river only? He said, Tomorrow. And he said, Be it according to thy word, that thou may know that there is none like unto the Lord our God. And the information down here says, when Moses said, Glory over me, he was granting Pharaoh the right to choose, showing that the end of the plague was under the Lord's control, and he start and stop the plague at will. God controlled those frogs. He chose when it ended. Nobody could stop the plague. In this case, the plague of the frogs. No one could stop that but God himself. God could stop that. And that's what he's saying here. The plague was under the Lord's control, and it would start and stop at his will, at his at his word. When he said it was to start, it will start, and when he said it will stop, it will stop. Verse 15. But when Pharaoh saw that there was respite, he hardened his heart and heard not unto them, as the Lord had said. And the information down here, this is the first instance of Pharaoh making his heart heavy himself. But it is matched by the notice in 7:26 in Exodus 7 verse 26. Go back and watch my last video. You can either go back and read it, or you can go back and watch my last video where I read through chapter 7. Oh, and by the way, when I'm making these videos, I do encourage you to get your Bible out and follow along with me so you can see what I'm reading. I do encourage you to do it when you're watching these. Okay, back to what I'm saying. But it is matched by the notice in 7:23 that he failed to set his heart. to the first plague reference to Pharaoh hardening his own heart, and the sense of making it heavy and so inoperative also included in 8:32 and 9 verse 34. Read those. We haven't gotten to either one yet, but you can either go ahead and read them now or wait till I get to them. But I do encourage you to follow along in your Bible as I'm reading. Let's see. Okay, that was 15. We're going to go ahead and read verses 16 through 19. This right here is the plague of lice. And the Lord said unto Moses, Say unto Aaron, Stretch out thy rod, and smite the dust of the land, and it may become lice throughout all the land of Egypt. And they did so, for Aaron stretched out his hand with his rod, and smote the dust of the earth, and it became lice in men. And in beasts all the dust of the land became lice throughout all the land of Egypt. And the magicians did so with their enchantments to bring forth lice, but they could not. So there were lice upon men and upon beasts. And the magicians said unto Pharaoh, This is the finger of God. And Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and he heard not unto them, as the Lord had said. There we go with another one of the plagues that God released. He released a couple of them. This is, let's see, the plague. We already heard about the plague of frogs. We're reading about the plague of lice now, and next will be the plague of swarms of flies that cover the land. But real quick, we're going to talk about verses 16 through 19. We're going to talk about verses 16 through 19 real quick about the plague of lice. Researchers have debated. On. Okay, this right here. They could not duplicate the plague. Pharaoh's magicians declared that this is this is the finger of God. Read 31:18, Deuteronomy chapter 9 verse 10, and Psalms 8 verse 3. Those are some listed down here that you can go and read. Yet, by their description, this disaster required the action of just a finger of the God who had said he would put his hand into Egypt. Furthermore, Goshen was excluded from the plagues, beginning with the fourth, making it irrefutable that the God of the Hebrews was responsible. Another one right here. Researchers have debated about exactly what kind of troublesome insects these were: lice, gnats, flies, mosquitoes, or ticks. And when they found that they could not duplicate the plague, Pharaoh's magician declared, This is the finger of the Lord. So, this right here just shows. These plagues right here is all showing God's control. God is in control. That's what this is showing. Okay. Now, we're going to go verses 20 through 32. This is going to be a little longer. The plagues of swarms of flies that cover the land. And the Lord said unto Moses, Rise up early in the morning, and stand before Pharaoh. Lo, he come forth into the water, and said unto him, Thus saith the Lord, Let my people go, and that they may serve me. Else, if thou wilt not let my people go, behold, I will send swarms of flies upon thee, and thy servants, and upon thy people, and thy houses of the Egyptians shall be full of of swarms of flies, and also the ground wherefore they are. And I will, and I will serve in that day the land of Goshen, in which my people dwell, that no swarms of flies shall be there. And in the end thou mayest know that I am the Lord in the midst of the earth. And I put a division between my people and thy people. Tomorrow shall this sign be. And the Lord did so, that there came a grievous swarm of flies into the house of Pharaoh, and into his servants' houses, and into all the land of Egypt. The land was corrupted by reason of swarms of flies. And Pharaoh called for Moses and for Aaron, and said, Go ye sacrifice to your God. And Moses said, It is not meet so to do, for we shall sacrifice an abomination of the Egyptians to the Lord our God. Lo, shall we sacrifice the abomination of the Egyptians before their eyes, and will they not stone us? And Pharaoh said, I will let you go, that ye may sacrifice to the Lord your God in the wilderness. Only ye shall go not very far away, entreat for me. And Moses said, Behold, I go out from thee, and I will entreat the Lord that the swarms of flies may depart from Pharaoh his servants and from his people tomorrow. But let not Pharaoh deal deceitfully any more in not letting the people go to sacrifice to the Lord. And Moses went out from Pharaoh and entreated the Lord. Did according to the word of Moses, and he removed the swarms of flies from Pharaoh and his servants and his people. There remained not one, and Pharaoh hardened his heart to this time also. Neither would he let the people go. So again, Pharaoh would not let the Israelites go. Even after God told him to, he wouldn't do it. God released a swarm of flies on him and all of the people. And these, because any of you just had that annoying fly, like anybody ever been outside, it's hot, you're sweating, you got flies around you, and you're trying to do something, and the flies are just getting on your nerves or your ears or in front of your face. I mean, it's annoying. And if you ever had that happen, where you're trying to do something, you've just got so many flies. These things are getting on your nerves, they're in the way, and they're annoying. Because all you keep hearing is you hear that buzz in your ear, they're flying right in front of your face, or people with glasses, they like to fly in between your glasses. Not fun, not cool. Any of you ever had to deal with that? Well, imagine those those but usually those swarms of flies are in that area, and yes, you're there, but usually you can get away from them. You can go in your house, you can get away from them. You can get in the car and get away from them. You can go to the other side of your yard or whatever. You can usually get away from them. Imagine them being everywhere, and you cannot get away from them. They're all over your yard. They're in your cars. Back here, they didn't have cars, but they're in your house. They're out in the yard. I mean, they're everywhere. I mean, you cannot get away from them. Imagine how hard that would be to not be able to get away from them. And they're so annoying because almost everybody has had that just annoying fly that won't get away from you. That's buzzing in your ear, flying in your face. Imagine that all the time, and imagine not being able to get away from it. And that's what happened. These heaps of flies were everywhere. And I mean, you just could not, that you couldn't get rid of them. The only person that could stop them was God. God was the only one with the power to stop these swarms of flies. And so, I mean, imagine that. Just take a minute and imagine how that would be. Like, I mean, sometimes it's so bad you can't do nothing because it's just so bad. They're so annoying because they're in your ears. They're flying into your face, and it's just like, and you get so annoyed. You're like, just go somewhere. Just go on. But here, they couldn't do that. They couldn't do it because they were there and they were staying until God said they were leaving. The people couldn't get rid of them. Pharaoh couldn't get rid of them. Israelites didn't really have all that, but they couldn't do anything either. I mean, speaking. Anyway, like I said, Pharaoh couldn't get rid of them. The Egyptians couldn't get rid of them. I mean, nobody could get rid of them except God. And God would get rid of them when He was ready to. God wasn't ready to get rid of them. God released them. So, imagine that. Just having all those in your face all the time. So, that would be difficult. Very difficult. Okay, now we're going to go through reading 9, and there are information things at the bottom of this. Okay, I'm going to show you guys real quick my study Bible. This is a different one. This is my King James version right here. This is my King James right here. This right here is my King James version that I'm reading out of right now. And this is my study Bible. So, this right here is the chapter, and down here are a little information. It tells you what book and verse it is, and chapter. So, we're going to go through. Looks like we finished chapter 8. So, we'll be starting chapter 9 after we talk about chapter 8. So, we're going to go through verses 20 through 32 real quick. Let's see what this has to say. First, I'm going to read verse 21, and then I'm going to read you the information it gives. Else, if thou wilt not let my people go, it looks like we have finished chapter 8. We'll be moving on to chapter 9 after we talk about verses 20 through 32. Like it's my study Bible. What it does, if I can get the. This is my study Bible. Right here is like the actual like books and verses, and this down here gives information on them. And this is my King James version. So, anyway, do this. Anyway, chapter 8, verse 21. Else, if thou wilt not let my people go, behold, I will send swarms of flies upon thee, and upon thy servants, and upon thy people, and into thy house, and into the houses of the Egyptians shall there be full of swarms of flies, and also the ground whereon they are. Like I said, imagine those flies just everywhere. Like you cannot get away from them. They're buzzing in your ears, or in your face, they're covering you, they're landing on you. I mean, imagine that. Anyway, okay, so now I'm going to read their information. The use of two somewhat rhymes form of a Hebrew word that sends marks the cause and effect connection. That Pharaoh needed to recognize an idea of the tone may be indicated by a rendering such as, "If you won't send out my people, I will send in flies." meaning that God told him, release my people or I'm sending flies. He wouldn't release Pharaoh wouldn't release the Israelites, so God sent swarms of flies, like he told him he would. Now, we're going to go to verses 22 and 23. We're going to read through those one more time. And Pharaoh, hold on, 24. And I will serve in that day the land of Goshen, and in which my people dwell, that no swarms of flies shall be there, to the end thou mayest know that I am the Lord in the midst of the earth. And I will put a division between my people and thy people. Tomorrow shall be this sign. Tomorrow shall this sign be. Okay. During the remaining plagues, the Lord would distinguish his people from Pharaoh's people in order to give knowledge of his sovereign presence. This new element that the use of two forms of the word send in verse 21 helps to highlight the conflict and contrast between the Lord and Pharaoh. Pharaoh was unable to protect his people. Goshen was in northeastern Egypt, possibly by, I can't pronounce that, some town I can't pronounce. Watumilate, something like that, and had excellent pasture for sheep and goats. Go read Genesis 45:10, 46:34, and 47 verses 4 and 6. Okay. So pretty much God distinguished his people versus Pharaoh's people. Pharaoh couldn't protect his people from the plagues. God protected his people. God protected his people, and his people didn't have to put up with the plagues. God protected his people from the plagues. He shielded them. Pharaoh couldn't protect his people. This goes to show power and who's in charge. I mean, this really goes to show who's in charge. God could protect his people. Pharaoh could not protect his people. God's people were shielded. Pharaoh couldn't shield his people. He couldn't protect his people. He couldn't stop it. He couldn't stop his people from getting hit with these plagues. God, on the other hand, his people were shielded. He protected his people. That goes to show the power. Because Pharaoh couldn't do nothing. We're going to read 24 through 28, and then I'm going to read the information down here. Okay. And the Lord did so, and there came a grievous swarm of flies into the house of Pharaoh, and into his servant's house, and into all the land of Egypt, and the land was corrupted by reason of the swarms of flies. And Pharaoh called for Moses and Aaron, and said, Go ye, sacrifice to your God in the land. And Moses said, It is not meet to do so, and we shall sacrifice the abomination of the Egyptians to the Lord our God. Lo, shall we sacrifice the abomination of the Egyptians before their eyes, and will they not stone us? We will go 3 days' journey into the wilderness and sacrifice to the Lord our God, as he shall command us. And Pharaoh said, I will let ye go, that ye may sacrifice to the Lord your God in the wilderness. Only ye shall not go very far away. Entreat for me. So, the information they've given down here. The rare word translated swarms of flies does not specify a particular insect that may indicate a mixture. Pharaoh's stipulations in verse 25 and 28 show that he still thought he was in charge and could assert his authority. His "ye shall not go very far" uses an emphatic construction, and the kind of negative command that only someone of superior status could issue. The word Moses used for abomination is the same one that Genesis 43:32 and Genesis 46:34 used to talk about the Egyptians' refusal to eat Hebrews with Joseph's Hebrew brothers. That is the Egyptian scorn for shepherds. Pharaoh admitted the clash of cultures, and he would let the Israelites go and sacrifice in the wilderness. But his quick command intrigued for me. Just two words in Hebrew shows that he was primarily interested in. Okay, quick backstory for those of you that have not read Genesis 43 or 46. For those of you that don't know the story of Joseph or Jacob, Joseph was Jacob's son. Okay, how do I say this? Abraham, everybody knows the story of Abraham. If you don't, the quick story of Abraham had a son named Isaac. Abraham and his wife Sarah had a son named Isaac. Isaac married, no, yeah, Isaac married Rebecca, and they had two sons, Jacob and Esau, two twin boys. Jacob went and married Rachel, her sister Leah, and they had some kids. Jacob really loved Rachel. No, Joseph really loved Rachel. Jacob loved Rachel, not Joseph. And Jacob had kids with Leah and with a couple others, but the woman that he really loved, Rachel, had a son, Joseph. And later had a son, Benjamin, who she ended up dying after having him. So Rachel had two sons, Joseph and Benjamin. All of Joseph's brothers, so Joseph and Benjamin were Jacob's sons and Rachel's sons. So a bunch of the brothers and Joseph went out. And the brothers actually sold Joseph. They actually sold Joseph to the Egyptians. And he was held captive. And he actually was locked up for a while. But they could see the Lord in him. And he told them that there was going to be a famine. For 7 years, there was going to be a famine. So at the time, he was told, go, do what you need. Do what you're supposed to do, what you have been told. Get the food, stock up on food, do what you're supposed to do. And when the famine came, he sold food to people. His brothers come up there to buy food. He recognized them, but they didn't recognize him. He recognized his brothers, but they didn't recognize Joseph. And Joseph told them, next time you come back, bring Benjamin. They brought Benjamin. Later he revealed himself. And he told them that when they were to come back to bring his father. And they brought Jacob. Jacob was really happy to see that Joseph was alive, because he didn't think, because he was told that he was he'd been gotten by some wild beast. His brother, he didn't know that the brothers had sold Joseph. He thought Jacob thought that his son Joseph had been gotten by a bunch of wild beasts. Anyway, so this right here. Anyway, when Joseph's brothers come up there, a lot of the Egyptians didn't like it. So, down here, where it says, so I would recommend you go read Genesis, go read Joseph's story, because you'll understand a little bit more. Because I can't sit here and go through the whole thing, but you'll understand more if you go read it. Anyway, I'm going to talk a little bit about this and So I just was going to talk a little bit about that and give the backstory so you somewhat understand. I am going to recommend you go back and read that. You need to. You need to go back and read Genesis if you haven't read Genesis. Read the story of Jacob. Of Jacob and Joseph. Really, you need to start with the story of Abraham, then Isaac, Jacob. Yeah. So, you really need to go back and read the story of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph. Read all that and it'll make sense. But for this particular, read the story of Joseph. So, this right here. The word Moses used for abomination is the same one that Genesis 43:32 and 46:34 used to talk about the Egyptians' refusal to eat with Joseph's Hebrew brothers. That is, the Egyptians' scorn for shepherds. Pharaoh admitted the clash of cultures. He would let the Israelites go and sacrifice in the wilderness, but his quick command, entreat from me, for 2 words in Hebrew shows that he was primarily interested in. So, anyway, then we're going to go to. Oh, my battery is dying. Uh oh. I got literally not much time left. We're going to try and finish as fast as we can. I might just finish chapter 8 and have to do another one, and I don't know. I'll see. I don't know. I'm gonna finish reading through this, charge this, and I'll come back and read 9. Anyway, let's see. Okay, verse 29. And Moses said, Behold, I go out from thee, and I will entreat of the Lord that the swarm of flies may depart from Pharaoh, from his servants, and from his people. Tomorrow, but let not Pharaoh deal deceitfully any more in not letting the people go to sacrifice to the Lord. Jacob used the information down here says, Jacob used the word translated here, deal deceitfully, to describe how Reuben had cheated him when he kept changing Jacob's pay. Go read Genesis 31:7. Again, I say, go read that entire story of Joseph, Jacob, all of them. You really need to just go read the entire story of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph. Just all of it. Y'all really need to go read that because this will start to make more sense if you read that. I have learned by just reading it. You really need to read it like that, and it will make more sense. Anyway, the Lord was not obligated to give Pharaoh warnings or rebukes. Each rebukes and each warning of an impending plague gave Pharaoh an opportunity to change course. Meaning that when God gave him the warning that he was going to send a plague, that was telling Pharaoh, hey, this is what I'm going to do. If you don't release my people, I'm going to do this. Pharaoh at any point in time could have said, wait, don't send plagues. I'm releasing your people. Go. But he didn't. Pharaoh kept choosing the plagues because he chose not to release the people. God didn't have to rebuke it, and God didn't have to give him a warning. But he was warning him, hey, let go of my people or I'm doing this. So, he did that. Anyway. And that covers chapter 8. Let's see. How much more time can I get out of this thing? I might get 30 minutes. That might be enough to read 8. I meant to read 9. I'm not quite sure, and I really don't want to start if I can't finish. Plagues of the Beast. Okay. The next one is going to be the Plagues of the Death on the Beast. But I don't know if I'll be able to read that with the battery I got right now. Yeah, I think I'm going to go ahead and charge this, and then I'll come back and finish reading when this thing's charged some. So, I'll see y'all in a couple hours. Well, for y'all it'll be 2 seconds, but I'll see y'all in a little bit. Okay, verses 1 through 12. No, verses 1 through 7 we're going to read real quick. Then the Lord said unto Moses, Go in unto Pharaoh and tell him, Thus saith the Lord God of the Hebrews, Let my people go, that they may serve me. For if thou refuse to let them go, and would hold them still, behold, the hand of the Lord is upon my cattle which is in the field, upon the horse, and upon the donkeys, upon the camels, upon the oxen, and upon the sheep. There shall be a grievous murrain. And the Lord shall spare between the cattle of Israel and the cattle of Egypt, and there shall nothing die of all that is the children of Israel's. So the Israelites don't have to worry about this plague, because he won't kill their things. But the Lord a set time, saying, Tomorrow the Lord shall do this thing in the land. And the Lord did that thing on the tomorrow. And all the cattle of Egypt died, but the cattle of the children of Israel died not one. But Pharaoh sent, and behold, there was not one of the cattle of the Israelites dead, and the heart of Pharaoh was hardened, and he did not let the people go. So this right here shows that he had told them he was going to kill all their livestock, all of them, if he didn't let the people go. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and keep going, and then if my battery ain't dead by the time I finish chapter 9, we'll go through and read through the study Bible. Now we're gonna do 8 through 12, the plagues of boils and blisters. For those of you that don't know what boils are, they're like very painful, like sores on the skin. And blisters. Yeah, I think everybody knows what blisters are. And the Lord said unto Moses and unto Aaron, Take to you handfuls of ash and of the furnace, and let Moses sprinkle it towards the heavens in the sight of Pharaoh. He shall become small dust in all the land of Egypt, and shall be a boil breaking forth with blains upon men and upon beasts throughout all the land of Egypt. And they took ash of the furnace, and stood before Pharaoh, and Moses sprinkled it up up towards heaven, and it became a boil breaking forth with flames upon man and upon beast. And magicians could not stand because could not stand before Moses. I'm gonna try that again because I messed that up. And the magicians could not stand before Moses because of the boils, for the boils was upon the magicians and upon the Egyptians, and the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, and he heard not unto them, as the Lord had spoken unto Moses. So he released a bunch of painful boils and blisters, and they were to cover them. Now we're going to go chapters 13, verse 13 through 21. This is Moses warns about the coming plague of hail. And the Lord said unto Moses, Rise up early in the morning, and stand before Pharaoh, and say unto him, Thus saith the Lord God of the Hebrews, Let my people go, that they may serve me. For I will at this time send all my plagues upon thine heart, and upon thy servants, and upon thy people, that thou may know that there is none like me in all the earth. I know I will stretch out my hand, that I may smite thee and thy people with pestilence, and nope, and thou shalt be cut off from the earth. And in very deed for this cause have I raised thee up, for to show in thee my power, and that my name may be declared throughout all the earth. As yet exalted thou thyself against my people, that thou wilt not let them go. Behold, tomorrow about this time I will cause it to rain a grievous hail such as hath not been seen in Egypt since the foundation thereof, even until now. Send therefore now, and gather thy cattle and all that thou hast in the fields, for upon every man and every beast shall be found in the fields, and shall not be brought home. And hail shall come down upon them, and they shall die. He that feareth the word of the Lord among the servants of Pharaoh made his servants of his cattle flee into the houses. Alright. And he that regardeth not the word of the Lord left his servants and his cattle in the field. So he sent the plague of, he warned that he was going to send a plague of hail. Now I'm going to read verses 22 through 35, revealing about the plague of hail, and then we'll go through my study Bible and read about that, because I should have some time. I got 20 minutes probably on this battery. Anyway, and okay, the plague of hail. And the Lord said unto Moses, Stretch forth thy hand towards the heavens, that there may be hail in all the land of Egypt, upon man and upon beast, and upon every herb of the field throughout the land of Egypt. And Moses stretched forth his rod towards the heavens. And Moses stretched forth his rod towards heaven, and the Lord sent thunder and hail, and the fire ran along upon the ground, and the Lord rained hail upon the land of Egypt. So there was hail and fire mingled with the hail, very grievous, such as there was none like it in all the land of Egypt since it became a nation. And hail smote throughout all the land of Egypt, that all that was in the field, both man and beast. And the hail smote every herb in the field, and broke every tree of the field. Only in the land of Goshen, where the children of Israel were, was there no hail. And Pharaoh sent and called for Moses and Aaron, and said unto them, I have sinned this time, the Lord is righteous, and I and my people are wicked. Entreat the Lord, for it is enough, that there is no more mighty thundering and hail. I will let you go, and ye shall stay no longer. And Moses said unto him, As soon as I am gone out of the city, I will spread abroad my hands upon the Lord, and the thunder shall cease, neither shall there be any more hail, and thou mayest know that that the earth is the Lord's. But as for thee and thy servants, I know that ye will not yet fear the Lord God. And the flax and the barley was smitten, for the barley was in the ear, and the flax was bold. But the wheat and the rice were not smitten, for they were not grown up. And Moses went out of the city from Pharaoh, and spread abroad his hands unto the Lord, and the thunder and hail ceased, and the rain was not poured upon the earth. And when Pharaoh saw that the rain and the hail and the thunders were ceased, he sinned yet more, and hardened his heart and his servants. And the heart of Pharaoh was hardened, neither would he let the children of Israel go. And the Lord had spoken to Moses. After all that, he still wouldn't let them go. After all of that, because I remind you, so far we have read about the plague of frogs, the plague of lice, the plague of the swarms of flies, the plague of the death of beasts, and their cattle, all their farming, everything, the plague of boils and blisters, and the plague of hail. And he still won't let them go. He still doesn't believe that God's going to make him let them go. Anyway, I got a little bit of time. Okay, we're going to go through and read. For 9, let's see. Okay, alright. Verse 2. For if thou refuse to let them go and would hold them still, that right here is just meaning the phrase hold them use a form of the same verb that chapter 4 verse 4 uses, where Moses caught the snake to speak of Pharaoh holding on the Israelites' fit seams in Egyptian art. That depicts that the king is a warrior with one hand grasping a captive by the hair and by holding a club ready to strike him. 3. Behold, the hand of the Lord is upon thy cattle which is in the field, upon the horse, upon the donkey, and upon the camels, upon the oxen, and upon the sheep. Therefore shall be a very grievous murrain. Now the information down here. Plague 5 is in keeping the Lord's earlier announcement that he would put his hand into Egypt and extend his hand against Egypt. Chapter 3, verse 20, chapter 7, verse 4 and 5. Murrain is another word for plague. Verses 5 through 7. And the Lord anointed a set time, saying, Tomorrow the Lord shall do this thing in the land. And the Lord did that thing on the morrow, tomorrow, and all the cattle of Egypt died. But of the cattle of the children of Israel died not one. And Pharaoh sent, and behold, there was not one of his cattle of the Egypt. There was not one of the cattle. And Pharaoh sent, and behold, there was not one of the cattle of the Israelis dead. And the heart of Pharaoh was hardened, and he did not let the people go. I'm going to read that again because I messed that up and I didn't even understand that, so I know y'all probably didn't. And Pharaoh sent, and behold, there was not one of the cattle of the Israelites dead, and the heart of Pharaoh was hardened, and he did not let the people go. Okay. Verses 5 through 7. The information down here. The word of time is used later in Exodus to speak of the anointments that the Lord set for the Israelites as occasions to gather and for worship. Chapter 13, verse 10, chapter 23, verse 15, and chapter 34, 18. Again, a distinction was made. No Israelite livestock died, which Pharaoh knew both from the plague announcement and from checking afterwards, but he did not benefit from the information that he gathered. Verse 7 highlights Pharaoh's contradictory behavior by using two forms of a Hebrew word for send. He sent to find out about Israelites' livestock, but would not send the Israelites out of Egypt. Later events, 19 and 20, indicate that all the cattle of Egypt is meant to be taken as an international hyperbole or general statement, with exceptions being minor enough not to matter, or that it refers to most of the varieties mentioned in verse 3, or the animals not in the field were spared, or that enough time passed for Egyptians to acquire more animals. So God protected the Israelites and their cattle and their people. He protected them and their livestock. He did not protect the Egyptians and their stuff. We're going to read verse 9. And it shall become small dust. 8. 8. And I guess I'll go ahead and read 9. And the Lord said unto Moses and unto Aaron, Take to you handfuls of ash of the furnace, and let Moses sprinkle it upwards towards the heaven, in the sight of Pharaoh. And it shall become small dust in all the land of Egypt, and shall be a boil breaking forth with blains upon men and upon beasts throughout all the lands of Egypt. Ash of the furnace may have been from brick kilns, which would have offered a measure of poetic justice. A boil breaking forth with blains, and specifically the botch of Egypt, were infamous enough to be included among the covenant curses in Deuteronomy 28, verse 7 and verse 35. Now I'm going to read verses 10 and 11 and read the information that comes with it. Okay. And they took ash of the furnace, and stood before Pharaoh and Moses, and sprinkled it upwards towards the heavens, and it became a bowl, breaking forth with them blains upon men and upon beasts. And the magicians could not stand before Moses because of the bulls, for the boils was upon the magicians and upon all the Egyptians. And the information down here says, Moses and Aaron stood before Pharaoh, but the magicians could not stand before Moses. This turnabout of words enhanced the statue of Moses by putting him in the position of holding court. The magicians were finished, but could not and are not mentioned again in Exodus. The magicians couldn't even stand in front of Pharaoh. They couldn't stand in front of Moses. Verse 12. And the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, and he heard not unto them, as the Lord had spoken unto Moses. My battery's really dying. 12. This is the first instance in which the Lord heard not the heart. This is the first instance in which the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh. Earlier notice that mentioned his heart condition 7 in chapter 7, verse 13 and 22, which I read, and you can go back and listen to in my last video. Oh yeah, I gotta plug this up. This is the last one I'm reading for now, then I gotta plug this up, and then I'll finish it later. I'll come back on here and record. Anyway, I'm gonna finish this one. If you watched my last video, you heard me read and go through chapter 7 of Exodus. So if you want to go back to my last video and listen to me read and follow along in your Bible, or if you want to go and just search up in your Bible and read it, that will make sense. And then chapter 8, verse 19, which I read earlier in this video, were recorded that Pharaoh did the hardening in chapter 8, 15 and 32, which I read earlier in this video. I read earlier in this video, and the first reference that the Lord's hardening Pharaoh's heart is the prediction in 4:21. I did not read chapter 4, but you do need. I did not read chapter 4 and post it on here, but you do need to go read that if you haven't. I would recommend. Actually, I strongly recommend that everybody read and start trying to live their life better. Start living for the Lord. So, anyway, I'm just going to put this up real quick. Here we go. Alrighty. So, my battery is dying, so I will come back and finish where I left off. But I gotta charge this for a little bit, and then I'll come back. So I'll see y'all in a couple hours, or for y'all it'll be literally 2 seconds.